This is a nice little Baetis pattern. I've got this on a size 16 just so you can see it a little bit better. I've got a glass bead on the front of my hook, and I'm going to tie in a few wraps of lead wire here just to help get this down in the water a little faster. So we'll go ahead and get a few wraps on the hook here. Just go ahead and wiggle that back and forth until that lead breaks off, and we'll do the same thing here on the other side. I'll just go ahead and push that up against the bead nice and tight, grab my thread. We'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to just start our thread right behind the lead. A few wraps, and we'll go ahead and cut this balance off. Then I'm just going to take a few wraps up through that lead just to get it nice and secure right behind the bead. And I'm going to bring it back, and we'll start migrating down the shank of the hook. I'm going to want to turn my thread counterclockwise just so it flattens out a little bit. We want to keep a pretty narrow profile on this. That's going to be about where we want it. For our tails and our legs, we're going to use a hen saddle feather. We're going to use gray here. We'll use the same feather both for the tails and the legs. Go ahead and hold that against the side of my hook and get a wrap or two to secure it in place. These are a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those a little shorter. And I'm going to go ahead and travel up to behind the lead. And we'll again turn our thread counterclockwise, making sure we're keeping it nice and flat. I'll be fairly careful here around the tails just so I don't yank them over the bend of the hook. I want to keep those on top. And then I'm going to just travel back up to behind our lead. For the abdomen, I'm going to use a piece of brown LifeFlex here. Get that onto our hook. I want these first wraps of thread to be pretty tight to lock that in place. I'm using nano silk so I can pull it pretty tight. I'm going to stretch that LifeFlex as I move back towards the bend of the hook, and that's going to kind of narrow the diameter of this material, allowing us to get that taper we're looking for. And you'll see as we wind back up towards the front, making our abdomen, we'll let up on some of the tension, and that will create a nice ribbing as well as the taper. So I'm going to come back up and leave my thread right behind the lead. We'll grab our LifeFlex. I'm going to pull it fairly tight as I take these first few wraps. I'm just going to take touching wraps. And then as we move up, I'm going to release tension on this just the slightest little bit. And that's going to give us that ribbing effect, and it's also going to make this taper a little bit. So right up here behind the lead, I'm going to take a wrap or two over the top to secure that LifeFlex in place. I'll take another couple of wraps on the other side. And then I can just stretch that tight as I clip it, and that LifeFlex will suck right down into those thread wraps. Our wing case is just going to be a 1/8 piece that I've trimmed down of scud back. Go ahead and secure that right behind the bead. And then coming back, I just want to make sure I keep that centered on the top of the hook. I can take a few wraps back onto that. I'm going to finger dub on some Hare's Ear Plus dubbing, or Hare's Plus dubbing. It's a really nice dubbing mix that's got the hare's ear kind of hair quality, but it also has a little bit of crystal material built into it. Go ahead and get that tightened down. Take a couple of wraps right back here where our scud back is tied in. And we're going to just work our way forward. We don't want to go all the way to the bead. I just tighten that down a little bit as I go. For the legs, I'm just turning back to that gray hen saddle feather. I'm going to tie on one bunch on my side of the hook. Get a loose wrap just to kind of get those secured in place without pulling them over the top. We'll take our next bunch. We're going to tie this in on the lens side of the hook. Kind of hold those right up against the thorax here. Take a loose wrap and then tighten those wraps up a little bit. As we take our additional wraps, we'll position those just a little bit. So we have a nice set of legs coming out on either side, and we'll just come on in with our scissors and we're going to go ahead and trim off the butt ends. I'm going to add the smallest little bit of additional dubbing just to cover up those thread wraps. We'll go ahead and grab our scud back wing case and pull that right over the top. It's going to help separate those legs. Make sure you keep that right over the center of the top. Take that first wrap or two and pull that material a little bit tighter. Go ahead and fold it back. We'll take a couple of wraps right behind the bead here. And let that come back over at the top again. We'll grab our whip finisher. Take a couple of turns here. Make sure you seat your thread nice and tight. Come in with our thread cutter. You'll find we'll just come on in with our scissors. We'll stretch the balance of the thread, not the thread, but the scud back, and clip it off. And with that, you've got yourself a nice little Baetis Nymph. Like I said from the beginning, you can use this in place of a hare's ear or a pheasant tail. Good to have a few of these in the box. This is a size 16. Usually I'm tying this on an 18, maybe down to a 20. So throw yourself a hook in your vise and give this one a shot.